Catus Maximus here. Here's a review that doesn't get made very often. Bowling pin. This is a Vulcan Corp Vultex 2 bowling pin. This would be a standard American Bowling Congress bowling pin. 3.6 pounds, 4 3/4 inch waist diameter, 15 inches tall. This is a standard pin. There are also known as short pins. There are also thin candle pins, but these happen to be the particular standard. They're made out of hard rock or rock maple, but now they're really moving to synthetics because obviously you can't cut down a ton of trees, particularly with the special types of hardwoods that they use to make the bowling pins. So they are moving to synthetics. Synthetics also offer better longevity, more consistency, but you have a different sound. That particular sound of all the pins knocking together in bowling is indeed the pins knocking into each other and then hitting the wood floor versus the actual bowling ball hitting the pin itself. Vultex 2s are a decent pin, and they're pretty much a standard that you might try. Well, not that many people are running bowling alleys and are buying pins. But that's kind of the point of this video. Both a little bit of information for anybody who does run a bowling alley, as well as a general consumer, because one thing a lot of people don't realize is how large these pins are compared to the bowling balls that's hitting them, because they're always pretty far down the lane, so you never get up close. But these pins really indeed are pretty large. I mean, 3 pounds 6 ounces, 1.5 kilograms. They are a fairly heavy object. Some other things people won't be so familiar with is modes of failure, which would obviously be this plastic ring here. The way these pins are designed is partially just tradition and partially is due to the pin setters. The pin setters are those machines that sweep the pins across. They have turrets in there that will grab the pins. Some of them have various wire systems or tracks, systems to get the pins to get oriented properly and then be able to get set up. Pin setters are pretty complicated machines, and they beat up pins. Pins are getting knocked around by bowling balls as well as the pin setter machines. Surprisingly enough, some places will have pins that can just last years and years, and others pins can break in a matter of months. And it depends on the players, how hard they are throwing the balls, etc., etc. Modes of failure are cracking of the plastic, peeling away of this. This is Vulcan's Sherlin coated. The neck's breaking. The plastic ring at the bottom can really separate. One of the issues is excessive humidity or moisture. It causes the wood to expand and contract and can cause this to work loose. And something known as dead pins. You can just use a piece of wood to knock against a pin. If it sounds solid, then most likely it is. But if it sounds hollow or seems to be absorbing the energy, that's what would be known as a dead pin. And that has to do with the wood laminations getting separated and broken inside the pin. And so what happens is when the bowling ball comes and strikes it, instead of it transferring energy, just like billiard balls on a pool table, it absorbs energy, and that's a big issue. That's why if you know anybody who's into bowling, and if they're really into bowling, then they'll talk about whether they like their AMF pins or their Brunswick pins or their Vulcan pins, and they'll talk about their playability, how they move and fly. And yes, there's bowling voodoo that people who get their best games when they're bowling with AMF pins or when they're bowling with Vulcan pins. So anyway, just because I do a lot of channels doesn't mean I can't talk about recreational tools such as bowling pins. And it's a great thing to have as a talking point if you ever find one of these. And another thing to note, if people have ever seen entertainers juggling bowling pins, rarely are they actually juggling real 1.5 kilogram or 3 pound 6 ounce bowling pins, just because it's obviously gets pretty tiring. You'd have to have arms like a bodybuilder to do that. And anybody who does talk about some of the more voodoo stuff related to how good their game is against a particular set of pins, a retractable handle will make a much bigger difference on how well you bowl versus the types of the specific brands of pins that you're bowling against. I was really surprised to actually read some forums that actually had quite a few posts about that exact point. Wild. Anyway, since there was only just a couple of videos on YouTube even talking about bowling pins, I thought I'd make my own and give people just an opportunity to have a little bit more knowledge and detail about these white pins that people throw bowling balls against and don't really know what's going what these things are at down the bowling lane. Finally getting the right words out. Anyway, I really hope everybody's safe and healthy. I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.